You're just gonna start? That sounds hot.
Yeah. Yep, we're starting.
What if I have a cheesy 80s movie, but it's actually from 2010?
That's fine. 80s movies are like a state of mind. It's not actually a period in which
I
it was
don't
filmed.
actually think it's fair to call it an 80s movie because it's not, but it gives me that same vibe of like cheese and like humor, even in the face of like a different genre and topic.
What film is this?
It's called Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, yeah.
One
I know
of my
that movie.
favorite movies.
That's some good shit right there.
Yeah, it gives me the vibe of like 80s cheese and cornballiness and bro humor, but then like also it's from 2010 and it's just good.
And it's got a good polish on it. It doesn't have that rough. Yeah.
But it's not too polished, right? It's not like Cabin in the Woods where everything's just too shiny and too produced. Right. Even though like the concepts are similar.
I think in Cabin in the Woods, one of the monsters is the like murdering rednecks, right?
Yes. The best part about Cabin in the Woods is that every single like frame of it is a reference to something. Like you could just pause it at any point and we could like find a reference somewhere. Yeah. The thing though is I think the killing rednecks in the woods is probably like The Hills Have Eyes kind of gag rather than something better.
Whereas
like
Tucker and Dale are just like the nicest guys in the world.
The nicest guys in the world. So dumb too. Man. I think these kids have some kind of suicide pact. He threw himself around the wood chipper.
Ryan, have you not seen this movie? Do you not know
I've seen neither of these movies. I've seen the preview for Tucker and Dale versus Evil or whatever.
But it's on Netflix and like just find yourself an hour and some change and it's funny. If you don't laugh, like I don't know, I apologize, but I don't know if our humors are gonna ever sync up.
Yeah, it didn't look like my typical kind of humor. It looked a little like too cheesebally,
like a little cheesy.
It's very cheesy.
Or like playing into too many stereotypes.
In an endearing way. Oh yeah, definitely.
But I think, uneducated white males is the one demographic we're still allowed to make fun of. So I bet it's safe, right?
Yeah,
inoffensive.
It's the college students that are the true people that we end up making fun of throughout this film.
The true butt of the joke is the college students.
Yeah, it's the
Tucker
white college
and Dale
students.
Are your like ironic heroes.
I see.
And they catch their share of jokes, but like it's mostly
certainly.
The college kids.
Yeah. College kids.
And the big giant douchey prep who's the true villain.
I thought this was like a zombie movie.
No, it's not at all.
Whoa.
It has similar
all
vibes.
The subs.
Oh, I forgot we were live. I should probably turn on the Twitch chat.
Thanks, Incog.
So since we're live, what is the movie you were holding?
I watched last night Apollo 18. And if you're 18? A fan of space...
Were there 18 Apollo missions though?
No, there was only 17. Apollo 18
that
is the
right.
Apollo 18 is the secret mission to the moon by the Defense Department. Except they find something on the moon. It's inhabited by space rock monsters. Dun dun dun. And so it's like a horror film, but it's done with like the found footage. So it's all just like bad. When was the Apollo series? Like 1970s, like footage that you would have from a lunar lander or whatever. So like the film quality is intentionally that sort of bad lunar lander film stuff.
Is it actually with found footage? So is it like NASA footage or is it?
Oh no, it's a total fictional.
Okay, but it's meant to be.
Yeah, at the start, it's like. This footage was mailed to somebody. They're like 35,000 hours of footage that were mailed to somebody. This film was cut together by that footage. Da-da-da. It's pretty sweet.
I love the good. Like conceit of a found footage movie. The like conceit is we have found real life like cut together camcorder footage.
Yeah.
And like it's so professionally shot and you just have to buy it. I don't know why, but I can't. I never can. I sat through the entirety of Cloverfield just going like, and that couldn't have happened, and that shot doesn't happen, and that shot is not real. And it ruins it for me. Like the Blair Witch I saw when I was like 14, and I don't think it ever bothered me. But I've never gone back.
That was like the first one though, right?
Yeah.
Like they basically started that genre, and then but by now it's like,
and then it started to seep into other genres too, right? There's like the horror found film, and then there's like that terrible movie that's like, what if superheroes but found film? Oh my god, what's it called? Chronicle, I think.
I thought that was quite good, though, actually.
Oh, it's so bad.
We're live,
been
by
some
the way.
Good horror ones.
Sure. Yeah, it makes it hot.
Paranormal Activity, the first one. Oh, Wreck, the Spanish version, is really good.
Wreck.
Yeah, they remade it. An American version, it wasn't as good, but the Spanish one was good.
That sounds about right. American version is not as good.
Troll Hunter was good as well.
Troll Hunter?
Yeah.
Troll Hunter's good.
Yeah. That's found footage, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's like the exception quality within that genre.
Yes, yeah. Most of them probably are bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something about the genre tropes themselves that just take me like way out of the like moments. Like I like most movies, I don't have a problem just suspending disbelief. Even horrifically bad movies, I'm in it. Like when I watched Manos Hands of Fate, I was like, get him!
Oh my god.
Get him! Right?
Really?
But, like,
how could you even find out what the hell they were supposed to be doing? There was no
many beers may have been involved.
Oh, okay.
But, but like I'm the type of person that like is totally down with just having a movie, right? And just living the experience. But there's something about found footage where I can't. I just sit there and I go like,
I hate how it's influenced filmmaking at large. So even in like a a generic high budget Hollywood film, they'll have shaky cam footage when they want to pretend like they're making it immersive, and really all they're doing is making me motion sick.
Or like they just want an intense action scene, so suddenly the camera is just like while punches are thrown.
The worst for that is the battle scenes in Braveheart. I don't know if you remember, but they're all
Oh my god, it's been ages since I've seen
Braveheart. Was old. Braveheart was like pre Blair Witch though, right?
Yeah.
Was it?
I think so.
Braveheart's like, I don't know, was it like 94?
Let's see.
I think it came out before I was old enough to watch it. 95.
Nice guess.
I remember it coming out and wanting to see it, and it being like, you're 6, you cannot watch
Blair Witch was 91.
watch Claymore murder.
It's one of those films that I think is actually bad, but I've got such fond memories of it that I can still quite enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I've only seen it when I was a child, but my memories of it are fantastic.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of movies like that. There's this one movie I saw when I was a kid where this like guy was like an evil king, but he died or was like mortally wounded, and then a dragon gave him like half of his heart, and then like
Dragon
your
Heart.
main character, is that what it's actually called?
Yeah.
I loved that movie.
Yeah,
It's terrible.
as a kid,
It's so bad.
When did you watch it, Neal?
I watched it as a kid and then as an adult. As a kid, it was wonderful. I loved it.
It was like my favorite movie when I was like 9 or something like that.
Yeah.
It has one of my favorite lines of all time.
Movie.
Someone's like, Lord, the peasants are revolting. And the Lord's like, they've always been revolting. Now they're rebelling.
Yeah.
That's perhaps one of my favorite lines. But other than that, Dragonheart is tough to watch modern as an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you go back and watch it, it'll ruin your childhood. Well, not your whole childhood, but like It does not
I only
hold.
saw like 10 minutes of it on TNT once when I was older, and I went, I gotta stop or I'm not gonna like this movie anymore. So that's why I bring it up, because I know it was gonna be bad.
Is the dragon CGI or is it like stop
Oh,
motion
yeah.
or
Yeah.
CGI?
Yeah.
There may
Yeah.
be some scenes with like puppets or something. Like I bet they made like a face for it, maybe, or is it all CGI?
I
Who
don't
starred in
know.
that? It's
That wasn't Heath Ledger, was it? It was some dude that sort of
No.
looks like him.
no.
Dennis Quaid.
Dennis Quaid. There you go. Yeah, Dennis
Does
Quaid.
Dennis Quaid look like Heath Ledger?
Not at
I
all.
might just be full of
Neal
shit.
just doesn't know
Okay,
his.
because
He doesn't
I
know how
could
to name
see
drop.
Dennis Quaid in my head, but I see him kind of older, so I was like, well, maybe when he was younger, he was hot. I don't know. I still remember for my birthday once, I was turning some age, like middle school age.
As you do on your birthday.
Yeah. I thought I was going to be able to tell you how old I was, and then I realized I can't. I guess I could look up the movie, but a movie was coming out like on the 11th of May. It was like on my birthday, and I was like, it has knights in it. I want to see that with my friends. And it was A Knight's Tale. So I took all of my middle school boyfriends out to see A Knight's Tale, this like sappy, quasi-romantic thing.
Was it? I remember the movie actually being pretty good.
It is good.
Pretty good.
It is good, but it was not for middle school kids. Like not the same.
I feel like it was exactly for middle school kids. But
the character who did a lot of like boasting and like the
William Shakespeare.
No, it was maybe it was William Shakespeare.
It was Chaucer.
Chaucer, that's what it is.
Chaucer,
Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about Knight's Tale?
Yeah. He was great. He made us all laugh every time he was on screen. But like most of that movie is like about the romance with Heath Ledger.
It's a rom-com dressed up as but it's like well written and it's funny and
it's got a good soundtrack.
It's a men's rom-com.
I know it's a Neal. There's every rom-com
no
is a men's rom-com for Neal.
Look, it's okay to like rom-coms.
I think it's a regular rom-com packaged with knights and enough good jokes that a man will go to see it with
or like a 12-year-old boy will be like, that one, that's the one I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's the movie. Oh, cool, it's knights and squires and stuff, and then you show up and you're like, oh, it's but it's kind of cute, except for the weird dancing scene.
I don't know that I think it's discreet enough that you don't even realize you're being tricked into watching a romance until like,
it's only right at the end.
Or until like 10 years later and you're on a talk show with your friends and you're like, was that a rom-com? Oh no, I've been tricked.
It hits the rom-com moment when they have to start prepping for the dance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then like he makes up a dance on the fly and it's really modern and everyone just follows it. Yeah.
He's not bad for a peasant at dancing.
Yeah.
Sean, what's with the new camera angle?
I got a new monitor, but this monitor doesn't really have a rim on it, so I can't put the webcam directly on the monitor.
Oh no.
So I have it on a speaker right now.
That's fine.
I struggled so hard to find camera placement when I bought one, and I wasn't using my like onboard laptop camera anymore.
Yeah,
I had it like underneath me, and then there were nose hairs on camera, and I had it way above me, and I had it over here. Like, oh my god, I'm jealous that you have like a reasonably good and like angle right away.
Well, see, the nice thing is it's a speaker, right? So I can just kind of move it if I need to.
Yeah.
So I just kind of messed around with it a little bit. I'm a little worried though, because I wanted to move these speakers somewhere else, and now I don't know if I can because I have nowhere else to put the webcam.
Put it on a stack of books or something.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I got it because I wanted a 144 hertz monitor, and it fundamentally changed my life. Everything's a different experience now. It's just life is so smooth.
But you got nowhere to mount your camera. See, my 2009 flat screen is thick enough that I can mount a camera to the top of it.
Yeah, no, that's what my old monitor was. But you know what? Sometimes we got to make sacrifices for the things that make us truly happy.
I've never understood the like frame rate thing. I don't know.
Okay. I talked to somebody once who was like going from 60 to 120 or going from 120. What the fuck am I saying? The jump from 30 to 60 is smaller than the jump from 60 to 120 is what they told me, and I did not believe them at all. And I still don't believe them now that I've experienced it, but I get what they were saying. It's like everything is so smooth now.
I feel like 30 to 60 should be pretty noticeable, though.
Yeah, no, I think the difference is like 120 is this really nice luxury, whereas 30 to 60 is just a necessity to make a game playable.
I play so many games on 30. Okay, here's the thing. I couldn't tell you what was what. If you sat down and gave me a game that played in 30 and you gave me a game that played in 60 and a game that played in 120 or whatever, Greg, could not tell you the difference between them. I would not be able to label them.
I want to test that. I bet you could.
Yeah.
I invite you.
I don't know how to test it.
Get a game that runs at 30 and 60 and 140.
That's too much effort.
In front of me.
Way too much work.
First, mail me a PC that's capable of running a game at 60 FPS.
I'm actually like, I'm at the point where it's like, do I need to get a new video card? Because I can't hold 120 FPS in all my games.
Ooh.
I still have my Xbox 360. I'm sure it runs at 30.
Yeah, most games.
Oh, there you go.
It's weird too, because like a lot of those old like Xbox and PS2 games all ran at like 60 FPS. And now, well, a lot of them, not all of them. But then like it was the 360 and PS3 area, wasn't it? Where they all started going like 30 if you were lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
I didn't used to know or care, right? Like games just were games and they were all there was. And then suddenly one day everyone cared about, I think it was Total Biscuit's fault. Like I think he convinced everyone that frame rate was the most important thing.
I think it's when the PC gamers escaped their basements.
Yeah.
Started infecting the console community. Because I've always been aware or cared about that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I've never really had a high-end rig that...
Frame rate.
Like I don't care about it so much in everything, because like some things look fine when they're at a lower frame rate, and some things look bad when they're at a higher frame rate. Like sprite art is often really good at lower frame rates, and you want to keep it low.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do any of you know about computers? Like, I want to make a new computer, but who knows what to buy? There's so much shit out there.
I don't keep up with it. I used to build my own PCs, but
I can send you some of the stuff I got.
Hardware is.
Well, are you going for like as high end as it gets, or just like a reasonably modern
Well,
PC?
that's what I'm trying to work out. So I looked at this website, PC Part Picker, and there's like one that I could get for like 800 quid, but then another one for like 1100, and it's like I'm not sure whether it's worth spending the extra £300 to get the higher end version. It feels like maybe it is, but I don't actually know. And then I've got all the parts of my current PC. Like, can I reuse any of that?
Shanta's never touched a computer in his life. You're right. You're absolutely right. I've never touched a computer in my life.
Yeah, that's why he got his degree in Amish studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, I did my degree in computer science because none of us actually understand computers. We can just write code.
Oh, okay, I see.
So, yeah. I mean,
That's
so
a
you
computer
want to
engineer's job.
Yeah. You're going to want to get your motherboard and your processor paired. And other than that, you can kind of mix and match and upgrade.
I recommend having a brother who is a roboticist and builds computers in his spare time, and then just messaging him and saying, I have a budget of X, and he just sends you parts.
Yeah.
That sounds like that's kind
useful.
of what you're doing with this website you found. I hadn't heard of it.
PC Part Picker is
it's legit.
cool.
But so that's probably what it's going to do. But I would start from the motherboard and
that makes
and
sense.
the processor.
Mm-hmm.
And probably spend a lot of money there, and then you can upgrade your video card as you have extra funds.
Yeah,
RAM is also going to be pretty interchangeable. Like you're going to want the RAM to match itself, but like you don't want to be mixing different RAMs brands and
there's all the
capacities.
speeds on the RAM, and like what's all that about? Does that matter?
Yeah,
Yes.
it matters.
Yes, you want. Oh God, what is it now?
Get
is it
fewer sticks of higher speed RAM, so later you can add more RAM that will be of the same speed.
It's like
and type.
D&D, just get bigger numbers.
Yeah, bigger numbers are good. Yeah, higher clock speed RAM just makes it faster when it does lookups to RAM, so it's better.
And you might be able to reuse your power supply depending on what it is in your case, but otherwise everything in your current PC is probably outdated.
The case I've got is like just ridiculously large. It's part of the reason why I just want to buy a new computer that's not.
I mean, that might be for the best, like airflow.
Big cases are nice.
I love big cases.
Yeah, and like once you start building and tinkering, you're gonna get really frustrated if you've got a small case.
Yeah, like I have a fairly big case and I still get frustrated.
Yeah,
I know what you mean, but it's ridiculously large.
I mean, can you fit
it? How large is
You're
it?
talking to 4 Americans here.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
It's the Antec 1200.
Is it really a problem?
It's fucking big, man.
That's what she said.
Oh, Nick,
Nice.
the best advice I can give you: get an NVMe SSD.
Oh, of course. Well, I've got
That
an
is
SSD.
a regular sized computer case.
No, mate, it's too large. Well, yeah, but you can get small ones now, right? You can get like small fits. Small.
You don't want a smaller one.
I don't think
You
you
don't
want
want
that
the
if you're
small
You
doing
do not
one.
want a
things.
smaller one. Trust me, Nick.
Those
you
are
do not want a
fine if
smaller
you've
one.
got Chinese manufacturers putting your PC together and you never open it up. But
Yeah, you've got like professional tools. But
yeah.
Okay.
But if you're
okay.
doing it yourself, and if you're ever swapping out video cards and stuff, you're gonna want room to maneuver.
but the reason I say NVMe, you just slot that shit right into the motherboard. It was the easiest thing I've ever done.
really?
Yeah, no,
it's probably faster as a result. Even just
it is
getting
faster. It's way
even
faster.
just getting a really small capacity one for your operating system.
Yeah, well, I've already got
Then-
that in my current PC, but it's probably like 5 years old now, so maybe I'd buy a new one.
Mhm. I had no idea what it was. Like I opened it, I was like, wait a second, it's just like a small chip. I knew nothing about
really? It's just a
SSDs
little
before I
chip?
got it. Yeah, it's just like a little. It
Wow.
looks like a smaller version of just a RAM stick.
Mhm.
But yeah, you just put it into the motherboard, assuming it's compatible with it, and then it's really fast, and it's also really easy to install.
That shit's good.
All right, you convinced me. Fine. I still want a new case. I don't know. This is like 13 years old. It's old as fuck.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Dungeons and the Dragons, because I was introduced to a concept yesterday that I want to bring over.
All right, what do you got?
That's probably the only thing I've got, but here's what I got for you. It's like when you go to 0, you make either death saves in 5e or in 2e, you bleed out or whatever. But it sometimes has that feeling of like, whatever, you're just at negative again, who really cares? And maybe like you can't fight when you get back up, so there's a small penalty, but often it doesn't feel like it's all that impactful. But this idea is that when you are brought down to 0 or like dying in any capacity, you take a permanent injury of -1 to one of your physical stats, or you could move it over to mental stats. So I think that would be a fun way of
Permanently.
Yeah, permanent -1. If you hit 0 and you don't die, take a -1. Pick which stat you want, take a -1 in it.
Yeah, be at 3 and all stats on William by now.
Yeah, I feel like that's a mechanical punishment with not that interesting of a narrative component. I like the idea of finding a way to hack permanent injuries into. I mean, I don't know. Maybe 5e is the wrong edition to even be playing with, but
I think permanent injuries in 5e would work very well, actually, because in my opinion, a permanent injury should not mechanically affect your character in any way. It should affect the role play of your character.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that you could be at full HP and have a broken arm. And your punishment for having the broken arm is like, you can't use that arm. Right. And that affects so many things that you do. And I think 5e is abstract enough that is a system that supports what I feel like permanent injury should look like, as opposed to a more granular system that's like, no, we got to put numbers on this.
Where did you find this, Neal?
There is what's it called?
Is this just an OSR gaming blog? This sounds like something that would come out of
this
an
sounds
OSR
like there's a similar system in that Darker Dungeons 5e thing that was posted on your Reddit, and I refuse to read anyone else's content.
Dungeon Crawl Classics.
What is it? Dungeon
Crawl Classics. Yeah.
Oh, DCC.
There was a similar thing in in Darker Dungeons, which is another like 5e house rules.
Maybe if it was like semi-permanent, for a long time.
But I find that death is no longer really that scary once it's like, whatever, you're at 0. Well, someone will go patch you up. Let's just finish out this battle the next few rounds or whatever. I find that it's fine. You're just at 0. You're just dying. It's okay. Let's not worry about it too much. Doesn't have a lot of impact. I like the idea of, I like the fear of dropping to 0 or something. I think that it should be something that you want to avoid, and associating a penalty with it helps, I think, keep people from being like, well, maybe I don't want to drop to 0. Maybe like you drop to 0, someone heals you, you get hit again, you go back down. Someone heals you again, you get back up, you get hit again, you go back down, and you play the I'm just going to feed you a good berry while you're down, so the battle just goes forever. And now you just keep taking permanent injuries when you do that, because it's not good for you to go up and down.
Yeah. So the way this Darker Dungeon suggests doing it is if you're brought to 0 by a, I don't know, they call it violent attacks, but like from an enemy that's large enough to be threatening. So like getting brought to 0 by a goblin, you would ignore it. But if like the dragon or the giant or the ogre KOs you to 0, then you roll on this injury table and you lose all your teeth or something. And they also tack on exhaustion levels, which I think that's the exhaustion systems already exists in 5e. I think that's a great way to implement.
I like the exhaustion system a lot.
If you don't want to like bolt on a really shitty warmth cold system and ruin the play experience, just use the exhaustion scale for pretty much everything.
Wasn't the one issue I had with 5e with the exhaustion scale is it felt like it went from like 0 to fuck you and die really fast.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, Neal, I think the issue you're railing against is more to do with total existence failure than it is like the idea that basically it's the issue where like somebody drops to 0, they're down, they get healed to like 5 HP, they're back up and they're fine again. Then they drop to 0 and they're down, they get healed up back to 3 HP and they're fine again. Like that's the issue of total existence failure, where everybody's fine until they're on 0, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think you could introduce some exhaustion mechanics here. So like if you're at half HP, you add an exhaustion level. If you're at a quarter HP, you add 2 exhaustion levels or something like that.
Yeah, well, I tried this at one point. I don't think I've done it in a long time, but it was after I played Darkest Dungeon. I tried adapting that into a 5e game. Because in Darkest Dungeon, the way that works is if a character hits 0 HP, they go into death's door, and they're still standing, but they have like a penalty to certain things that they want to do. And the idea is every time they get hit after that, there's a chance that they die, just outright. So I did in 5e is once you drop to 0, you go onto death's door. I guess I could have done, you just take a level of exhaustion every time you hit death's door, and I should have done that. But the other thing is, while you're at 0 HP, any other damage that you take, you roll a death save, and if you fail the death save, you die. You're dead. And that gives people a little bit more like ability to make a choice. Like, do I want to continue to fight on the front line while disadvantaged, like as a last stand kind of approach, or do I want to retreat from the fight and get the safety? It gives like the person who's in the dangerous situation a little bit more control over what they want to do. And it also kind of gets rid of the idea of like, okay, I'm at 0 HP, I'm down. I'm at 4 HP, I'm back up, I'm good again. That was the approach I went for. And then if you want to make it so that people can't just like ping pong off of Death's Door and back without consequence, just make it every time you hit Death's Door, you gain a level of exhaustion.
That's nice. That's nice.
Reading chat, at least specifically for 5e, a couple of ideas. Make death saving throws in private, like the DM rolls them, so you don't know if your character's dying or not.
I've played with that system before, and I really dislike it because ultimately you're playing with a group of other players, and hiding that information from them sucks all of the tension and drama out of it. Like the idea of like planning and strategy and trying to go help and heal your teammate and is like just gone.
And
it's
the tension when you've got 2 death saves or even 1 death save and like don't critically fail, like that, those are some of the most
part of the reason we play the game is to have those dice roll moments. They're exciting and they're fun, and the strategy and the tension that builds with knowing them.
And 5e is such a cushy game, like the only tense moments are those failed death saving throws.
So alternatively, what if failed death saving throws get maintained until you have a long rest? So if you get knocked out,
I do that.
We did that. Yeah, we did that. Greg.
That's a house rule that I've implemented almost across the board in 5e. That you until you get a long rest, you hold your death saving failures. And so if you get knocked down and you fail one save and then you get back up, then the next time you get knocked down, you have one fail like locked in.
Mm-hmm.
You could have 2 fails locked in. So it gets more and more dangerous to go down as you continue to adventure until you...
How did that work? I worry that would be too punishing. I mean, I guess
Not
basically
at
you
all.
just can't be knocked out.
It worked well in our game. It just means like if you start stacking up the death saves, you want to try and wrap up the day. If you're running 5e with a little less combat, it works out well.
Yeah.
Tended to do like a couple of encounters per session with Seekers of Sarmanath.
And that was more of a pacing choice because of the group and the like style of play.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it with more combat and it still works. It's one of the best house rules we've ever had at the table.
I quite like the idea of that. Also, Neal, for 2e, you could have, the critical effects table. You could just roll on that whenever you go down to 0, depending on the blow.
A lot of those are not that interesting.
Yeah, interesting.
I've been meaning to redo or come up with a new critical effects table at some point. Like they're fine and they're interesting, but most of it's either like a mild inconvenience that doesn't affect the game, or it's like a debilitating character ending. Soul explosion.
Yeah.
What I
true.
What I kind of would like to see well incorporated is like scars or like things that give your character more character. Like so like if you get reduced to 0 HP, come up with some sort of table to like have some permanent injury that's interesting from a roleplay standpoint that doesn't make your character unplayable. I don't know.
I mean, if it's like a scale, you could the worst ones could be like -1 strength or -1 int. And then more other ones could be like, arm broken for the next month or until you can get medical help. They don't all have to be, because I feel like losing a stat point every time you're down to 0 is just sucks for fighters, and it's just making wizards even better.
Well, fighters can just stack them all into int. They've just had a bunch of concussions and they're introduced.
Their int and whiz drop, their charisma drops.
Yeah, but the fighter goes down far more than any other class.
So the trouble with
going
systems
down.
like that, the trouble with systems like that is they make your character unplayable eventually.
Yeah.
Like once you've gone down a few times, you no longer, it's like, okay, well, fuck this character. I'm just going to make a new one. Right? Like you want the kind of lasting effects that make your character more interesting to play once they're grizzled and battle scarred, not unplayable.
You'd have to go down a lot to
be
be unplayable, right? Because if you drop your int by 3, your wisdom by 3, and your charisma by 3, that's 9 going downs. You probably go down once every 3 or 4 sessions at most. So that's 9 times 4. That's 36 sessions before you've lost 3 points from your dump stats as a fighter.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not an option, but I think making it the only thing that put that as something on the table.
Okay.
But I don't know that, but it gets to
I'm not opposed to expanding this to other things. I do want to make the 0 feel more scary. I want it to feel like, God damn it, I've gone down to 0. This is terrible. This is going to be a serious problem for my character going forward. I don't want people to feel comfortable with it.
Just go back to death at 0 then. I mean, it worked well in hardcore.
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe instead of -10, it's
reasonable
-3.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It doesn't have to be -10.
The issue that I think you're going to run into more so than the loss of stats is that you are going to reinforce, or you're going to negatively reinforce combat to the players. You're going to make every player look at combat and say, I don't want to do it.
Yeah, because if I drop to 0,
awesome.
I get
which
worse.
for some campaigns that sounds perfect.
But
for
it's
some
not.
campaigns, it's perfect.
I get where you're.
On the whole, Dungeons and Dragons is a combat system. So unless Neal wants to play a different system, you're punishing
there are other systems?
Right. You're punishing the main pillar of play. In your
what is he talking about?
Yeah, then what are you going to do? You're just going to run. I mean, I don't know. Neal seems perfectly happy to just do like improv RP and ignore the systems. But the trouble with Dungeons and Dragons is the skill system sucks. So if you're avoiding combat, you're basically just rolling d20s and adding your charisma modifier over and over again.
Honestly,
if you've got a really good group of players, you can put together a rom-com just off the cuff. But
It's
sorry. Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, it's like, and I think the other thing is like, if you make death happen at 0, combat feels dangerous. But if you make 0 mean you lose stats, then it makes combat feel like punishing and shitty.
Frustrating.
Yeah, like that's, I do honestly at that point, like if you really just wanted to make 0 a scary thing, I'd say if you hit 0, you roll the death save. On a pass, you're safely incapacitated. On a fail, you're dead.
Yeah, or con save maybe.
Yeah, just like you make 1 save and you either die or you're like unconscious on the ground. And those are the 2 outcomes. Suddenly death is like, or hitting 0 is scary because it could just mean you lose your character. People are going to try to avoid to hit 0. But it also means that like you're not slowly playing a fucking loser with like 2 broken arms, a leg that's on crutches, and like.
Well, to be if you did that though, at that point you might as well do the stat drain as well, because you're not going to survive more than like a few stat drains before you finally.
Why even bother with the stat drain though? Why bother with it? why touch it at that point?
Just for the.
If you're using 5e, what about losing hit die to come from 0? Like limiting the number of times you can do it in a day. Probably in addition to some of these other things, but like if you pass your death saves and come back up from 0 or whatever,
I think that works.
You a hit die.
Yeah, it costs you a hit die. I am so excited to use hit die in interesting ways. Like I really want to use them more aggressively. So I'm about that.
Yeah, it takes the right players. I think Neal, were you introducing magic items that you expend hit die to use the items, or was that Greg?
I have done that in the past.
One of you had like some necromantic item that you
I had a dagger that you would power up by expending hit dice, right? So like the hit dice that you would otherwise be able to use to rest, you could power it up for extra +1s, right? And so you were limited by the hit dice pool that you had, but also by like how much you might need those hit dice for later resting.
But I think a lot of players are hesitant to use those resources. So you wind up with just a dud magic item that no one wants to use because they're hoarding their hit die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some players would be fun to do stuff like that in, but
absolutely. I think just limiting the number of times you could go up by your hit die might make sense. So at level 1, you can come back to fighting shape from 0 once. And then the next time you like pass your saves or somebody heals you, you're just at 0. You're out of combat. And at level 2 twice, and so on and so forth. All right. You get better at pushing past death's door as you get stronger, but you're also just like limited the number of times you can pop up and down until you get those hit dice back.
Yeah. So, I mean, going back to like the battle scars idea, I can remember when we played as teenagers, we would keep track of this shit. Like we'd be like, the orc hits me, and be like, where does it hit me? And like, okay, it hits you across the cheek, and you're like, oh yeah, when I heal from this, I'm gonna have the coolest scar. And like, it was cheating to come to the table with your level 1 fighter and be like, I got all these battle scars. You'd have to like, play and you'd remember where you got hit, and you'd make notes in the little like character description section of your character sheet describing all these wicked scars that your character's got. But mechanically, it doesn't come into play, so you've kind of you
leave it at the 13-year-old table.
Yeah, I tried to throw in that battle scar system in the Halvar campaign, and it didn't wind up accomplishing quite what we wanted. Like we wind up forgetting where the scars came from, and it just wound up just being a tally. Like, okay, Halvar has 7 scars, and he can use them to boost his intimidation.
Yeah,
but it didn't actually wind up adding the RP flavor that I wanted to see. Oh well.
We'll keep trying new things. Greg, you had prepared a whole bunch of wonderful stuff, I hear.
I even have a few topics that.
Oh my god!
Oh wow!
Wow! Look at you guys
after the great Nazi fiasco of 2020, Landmarch 2020.
I don't try to make it happen. Okay.
Sean just has his favorite subjects and he circles back to them.
All right, so let's avoid the Godwin's law of all of this, and Greg or Ryan, up to bat.
I'm happy to let Ryan take control if he wants.
Okay,
Ryan, drive the ship.
Few of our recent sessions have, brought up questions in my mind. I guess I'll bring the first one just because our Dicing with Death session the other day brought this topic to mind. So there was an encounter and an NPC that I had meant to include that I thought it was a cool NPC based on like a class that I've been drafting up that I wanted to introduce as like an encounter along the way that it just totally slipped my mind in the moment. And like after the session, I was like, well, shit, now I forgot to throw in that encounter, and and now it's not going to happen. So as DMs, what do you do with those discarded ideas? Either that you forget to introduce, or quest leads that the characters totally avoid. Any suggestions? So I've now got FOMO or whatever from not getting to use this NPC.
I just put it in my notes. And I leave it there until I need an NPC, because invariably someone is going to ask about some blacksmith's apprentice or some whatever that's kind of close to whatever NPC that you rolled up. And suddenly I have this really cool NPC all fleshed out and ready to go, and now they're just in a different place, and their coolness, whatever it is, a quest or their RP or whatever, is just locked and loaded for just a slightly different environment. And in my case, it always comes up sooner rather than later, because I don't flesh out thousands of NPCs. I flesh out like 7, and so invariably there'll be something pretty close to it I can just whip out.
I do basically the same thing. The only difference is that I usually only take notes on things that I've actually established in the game. So like if I introduce an NPC and I establish certain facts about them, then the players are like, okay, cool, bye, and they leave. I usually only note down the things that actually happened, because then if there's something that kind of fits but isn't quite the same, I can just adapt it over really easily, because I can just fill in the blanks in the notes. And that's probably the only difference between that.
I just kick myself and hate myself.
Yeah.
That's about it.
And then take it out on your players.
Yeah.
Over a prolonged period of 13 weeks.
Forgot to introduce the one scrag NPC, so now you guys have to just suffer. Yeah.
Was there supposed to be a scrag NPC?
No, I'm
okay.
Kicking around. Yeah.
He's found us. He's about to kill us, Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like you're touching up close to an interesting discussion point, right? Like,
almost.
What do I do with my plan? Well, but okay. So here's the thing, right? If I came to you and said, I'm running a West Marches campaign and I have this hex C37 and it's on a river and it's this and that. Like, what do I put there? I know that the Golden Hills are right behind it, and there's, dwarven caves there, and there's goblins here, and there's yada yada over here and here. And we could like come together for 5 minutes and put something in that hex. But that's not an interesting conversation, right? Hey, I have this NPC, right? And I don't know what to do with it. I didn't introduce it. We can tell you, hey, this is what I would do. Or like the topic that's close by to it is prep, right? Dungeon prep and character prep and social reactions. And how do you prepare for them? What do you do when they go wrong, right? And like the general idea of what's too much, what's too little, how do we incorporate that into actual play, right? That's a broader topic based off of the like specific question gendered, right? So I guess to talk more about what Ryan brought up is how do you come up with your social interactions, right? Like Ryan obviously has this really cool NPC with either like a specific style of role play or this quest that he's really enamored with, and he's kind of brought a microscope to the point. Is that how you guys build your social encounters?
I usually suck at it, and we've had a lot of really boring sessions. In this case, it was a specific interaction with the spell system that I wanted to introduce. Class, but I had an NPC in mind that was going to show up bringing this spell system interaction to the forefront. And
so you
and I even Neal avoids every quest I throw at him, and I actually got him.
You don't throw quests
at
me because you're like, here's something somebody maybe wants you to do a thing. I'm like, let me try and do the thing, and you're like, it doesn't work. I'm like, okay.
All right, Sure. But I actually got you to go where I was planning on going, and the guy was supposed to show up along the way, and I just like forgot. And then you got to your destination, and then it was like, oh, whoops. I didn't realize it until like hours later. I was like, oh God, there's supposed to be an encounter along that way. The delivery quest was meant to be much more complicated.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there was maybe a missing element to that. It seemed a little simple. Yeah.
Anyways, I more brought it up just as a potentially relatable DMing experience. I think the more common thing is the players avoided this prep that I did.
Players avoiding prep is a thing.
Yeah, I love that though.
Yeah.
I feel like when players avoid prep, the best I can say is just like, now you have prep for later. Mm-hmm. I really feel like that's just like the best answer I can give, because it's what I do, right? When players spend 4 weeks in a single town and not able to get like outside of it, and I have like all these months of prep, right? I can, when they leave and invariably go somewhere else, I just pick that prep up and I hold it and I put it somewhere else. I'm just like, okay, this seaside town is now a lakeside town over here, or like it's by a river, or maybe it's just like we cut all the ocean shit out of it and now it's in the middle of the next forest they're in. And being able to just reuse that stuff is really good.
My ultimate moment of players running away from my prep was I had started a new campaign. And I made like their starting area just kind of like a small port town. And I started fleshing out like the surrounding area just to put like dots on the map. Like, okay, there's like a city over here. There's some other towns over here. And then the very first session started. I'd fleshed out all these things about their starting town, and they asked about what was in the surrounding area. I mentioned there was a city multiple days away, and they were like, we're going to go there.
Yeah.
Very first thing they did in the game.
It always happens. There's mountains that are supposed to be an impassable barrier. We climb the mountains.
Yep.
It was like the very first thing. Like I started them off in a tavern in this town. They asked about the other towns in the area and immediately left their starting town that I put all this work in.
I think that's how Georg wound up
never went back.
That's how Georg wound up fucking up Shirebrook. You placed me in this like isolated area on the other side of the Shadow Mountains, thinking that the Shadow Mountains were this impassable barrier. And I was immediately like, well, if I head north and I run out of space to go, I guess we just climb these impassable mountains. And
you've got like companions with you just like falling down the mountains and dying. Didn't you lose like 5 people traveling the mountains?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Freed a bunch of slaves and then immediately got them killed.
But I think that provides an opportunity to talk about just like world building in general, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you're Neal and your life's work is creating Dungeons and Dragons games, you have the opportunity to plan entire worlds granularly, right? So you can build every city and every NPC and every wild area encounter along the way well in advance. But for those of us who aren't, able to spend a full-time job worth of hours on our worlds, right? I think that that's not a reasonable way to A, play the game, and B, prepare and plan for it. Like, it'll drive you insane if you prep your first session and say, okay, I've prepped this initial area, but then there's something else over there, and then your players immediately go for that, right? Unless you're really good at improving, which I think is a totally acceptable way to do it, right? Improv can lead to great sessions, but that's not everyone's like expertise, right? Not everyone feels comfortable doing that, right? Prepping in a way that allows you to be more fluid with what you've prepped and what your players do, be a little more modular in design, I think is a really good practice, right? And it's something that you can use limited time in your prep to accomplish a great deal, make your world feel lived in and full, and allow for your players to go where they want, but while still being prepared and in control, right?
But as sort of a, I don't know if it's a counterpoint, but like I think this is an example of something that probably should have been in your prep. Like, so if you're going to have minimalist prep, having thinking or being conscious of human psychology to some extent, or at least the psychology of your player group, is going to be important. And just knowing that if you put an impassable barrier in front of your players, they're going to want to find a way to pass it. So don't think that putting up a mountain range is going to keep your players from crossing the mountains. It's going to do the exact opposite. And in fact, your minimalist prep should be to prep the mountains and what's on the other side of them, rather than to prep all the goofy little fishing villages around your starting zone.
Until your player's like, is there a fishing village nearby? Guys, let's go out on an adventure over the seas. And then you're like, God damn it.
That's what I thought Sean was going to say when he was talking about his port town. I thought the first thing was going to be like, okay, screw your starting zone. We book passage on the first ship we find.
No, they went to a city and then they ruined that city. It was...
That's another element of DM prep. You can't get too attached to your world or to your NPCs because they're going to get murdered and they're going to get burned to the ground.
Yep. Anything you love as a DM, your players will destroy.
And I think it's reasonable to kind of corral your players, right? It's one thing if you're on a show, right? We have a little bit of experience with like streamed D&D, which is different than real D&D.
Only a little.
Number of ways.
Little bit, yeah.
And
yeah, this actually borders on my second topic.
Oh,
so we'll just get all the Ryan stuff out of the way. I mean, I kind of thought to bring it up, or bring the topic of the difference between a stream show for entertainment, which we've talked about before, but a stream show for entertainment versus a home table show, and also the difference between a storytelling campaign versus a min-maxing gamified campaign. So this came to mind seeing a lot of the feedback for the last episode of Homeward Bound, and a lot of and this happens quite frequently when you're streaming a game. You get viewers coming in and being like, "How dare you play suboptimally?" Or like, "How could you not? How could you not be sleeping in your armor all the time?" And
I know you guys are out there in the chat, and I disagree with you wholeheartedly.
And I mean, the difference here is we're playing a streamed game that's narratively story, like we're more storytelling than we are playing
because people are more engaged into big stories when they're watching a streamed game than they are into big combat games.
And I was a little surprised by the reaction because we actually had this conversation out of character where Neal was like, "Are you guys wearing your armor?" And we were both like, realistically, we're probably not sleeping with our armor on. We're probably not taking watches, knowing full well that we were setting ourselves up to get ambushed in the middle of the night with armor on. But I think there's a difference here between playing a game where you're trying to tell an interesting story and playing a game where you're trying to gamify and min-max and win the dungeon. Right? You play games.
Well, I felt like it's already kind of min-maxing the fact that we'd never taken our armor off for like X years. Like I felt like we should have been taking our armor off more often. The fact that we did it once is hardly seems unfair. Or stupid.
Okay, look, this is just fucking Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like, unless you make armor less of a necessity to live more than 2 rounds into a combat, everybody's going to wear their armor all the time, right? If you make armor like a soak mechanic that actually penalizes your defense and gives it interesting trade-offs, you'll see more people bounce between wearing armor and not. If you keep armor as AC and make every fighter have 10 AC as soon as they take their armor off, nobody's ever going to take their armor off. Like, incentives drive outcomes, and D&D gives you no incentive not to wear your armor.
And no real mechanical penalty for wearing it all the time, which I kind of agree. It's also not a very
if you sleep in your armor, you're supposed to get exhaustion, so you really can only wear your armor for like a week. Right, and then you die from.
But even that's an optional rule, right? They leave it up. They put that on the DM.
Okay, it is an optional rule, but I would argue that. Okay, you're right. It is presented in the book as an optional rule, so a lot of people could get rid of it and not think about it.
And a lot of snotty players will get mad at their DM for using these optional rules.
I find that exhaustion is okay. Snotty players should not get mad at your DM for using optional rules. Like that should be something that you talk about at the table, right? Like as part of, hey, I'm making a group of Dungeons and Dragons, like we're gonna run through this, campaign that I've either homebrewed, or we're gonna run through like the module that I've printed out here. I expect to be playing like this, what I expect my players to do X, Y, and Z, or we're gonna be using these optional rules, right? Or like the first time it comes up, you can say, hey, I want to use these optional rules. And if your entire table of 6 people is like, fuck that, then like maybe be willing to adapt as a DM. But that is something like people shouldn't be mad about those types of things. Like choosing to use an optional rule is part of the social contract of playing the game, right? And moreover, I find exhaustion in 5e especially to be a very, very, very important mechanic. Like I would highly suggest everyone playing with it.
I wish they had put a little more effort into it and put a little bit more of a ramp up into it, because the exhaustion mechanic in 5e could be so great. And it's just, I just wish, oh God, I wish there was like a thing where you could spend hit dice or something to avoid taking ranks of exhaustion, so you have a little bit more of a buffer before you start to like take on the heavy penalties. But then you could like put more
heavy penalties for a while though, right? You need like 3 levels of exhaustion before
you
it
get
starts.
I mean, that's the problem. It's like disadvantage. You're at half life.
Well, disadvantage on everything
dead.
is still huge, right? I think it's like you lose movement and then you take disadvantage on all checks by the second rank. It's like,
I like it
fast
that way, honestly, because then it is immediately something that players give a shit about. You've hit them right where it hurts, and it's in their dice.
Yeah. Well, I think 5e the rules are almost. This is an example of the. I mean, just their dice.
That's pretty good.
That is,
I just like the idea of giving a little bit more. I feel like if you made more of a ramp up or gave more ways to deal with exhaustion, you could put it in more things in the game.
I think this is a problem of an example of the problem with 5e's simplicity. And it's hard to make a ramp up. Like in 2e, it's easy enough to just be like, okay, per level of exhaustion, you just get a cumulative -1. And that means conceivably you can start stacking like 20 levels of exhaustion. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. But 5e doesn't really track those penalties. So it's either advantage or it's either regular roll or you're at disadvantage. There's nowhere to go from there.
Which I think is something that I like, and I'm gonna cut you off, Sean, and I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Go for it.
I think that I become kind of like the defender of 5e in this community, because this is a community that's very AD&D 2e 2. Neal centric, very gritty, very granular. But the difference is what the systems are trying to accomplish. The reason I love the exhaustion mechanic the way it is, and as broad strokes as it is, and as generic as it is because 5e is meant to be an abstraction at its very core. You're meant to be able to do anything in 5e because what it provides for you is a framework, and that's it. Right. And it's up to you to make the framework fit narratively. It's a much more dungeon worldy, narrative-y style than something like AD&D, which is very much like Ryan said, a accumulation of math, accumulation of -1s, which is great. And if that's the style that you're going for, you want this gamist feel, you want to add it up, you want the granularity of it, then an exhaustion system like that would be perfect for 2e, but it wouldn't be perfect for 5e, right? You need it to be an abstraction, and the exhaustion system, being as broad strokes as it is perfect because it's applicable to all of the situations that come up in 5e, which is many.
So to give you my issue with that approach that 5e took, I feel like they half-assed almost all of the systems that they put into it. Like, I agree. I like the streamlining they put into it. I like how simple 5e is to approach. It bothers me that everything that isn't in the combat system is like, it feels like they just kind of thought it up and thought, okay, let's make this borderline playable, and then went ship it. And that's a big feeling I get out of a lot of the things in 5e. Like, inspiration gives me that feeling. Exhaustion kind of does. The way that they like phrase ability checks in the book does. Like, I know you tried to fix that, Greg. The way that they like frame ability checks, where they're like, note that like skills aren't necessarily tied to ability scores, but then every other example they ever give of it in the book is tied directly to an ability score, and they even list the skills under their requisite ability scores.
Right.
That's a house rule that I read that I kind of liked, is being able to lawyer to use different stats for different.
As far as I'm aware, it's an optional rule that already exists in the books, and so it's
not even an optional rule. It's just the game. They specifically say like it's not necessarily tied to a skill.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Just no one ever noticed. It's just the way that that's laid out. It seems like,
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of trust between DM and players to be able to like argue with each other and like this, because every player is going to be like, I intimidate with my strength, and like sometimes maybe that's appropriate, but
hold on. So here's the
I
thought,
intimidate
though.
with my constitution.
What if you change the thinking away from
which in a drinking contest could work, right? But sorry, Sean, what were you saying?
Well, what if you move the focus away from I'm making a skill check to I'm making an ability check, and then instead of players lawyering that they get to use their other ability score with the skill, they lawyer that they get to use their skill with the ability. So if players are trying to say like make a long jump, you say that's a strength check, and if somebody goes, okay, well I have athletics, can I take my skill for that? You say sure, because that sounds like something you would do with athletics.
I think it needs to be both ways, though, because sometimes you're trying to intimidate the goblins into surrendering, and usually that'd be your charisma. But maybe if you're a big brawny fighter, it doesn't matter how charismatic you are; they're intimidated.
But that's fictional positioning. So if you go like, I'm gonna stand up, I'm gonna look as imposing as possible, and I'm gonna like point at the goblins and say surrender or die. That's how intimidating you look, right?
That's how the game
physical
should be played, though, right? I think something a lot of people miss about 5e is that it's a narrative system first. The
5e?
flow, yes, the flow of play should look like what Sean just said. You say, there's the goblins all. Take out their spears as a mug crashes to the floor. Bickering breaks out, and you see that they're like targeting your group with slanderous insults and sharp words as they brandish their weapons. And what do you do in the bar? And Sean's character says, I stand up and I point at them and I flex my muscles and I shout commandingly to intimidate these pesky small creatures. And as a DM, you say, excellent. You think to yourself, this is a situation that is not resolved without a die roll. And you say, what is the die roll that I'm going to call for my player to use? You say, great, Sean. You stand up, you make that, tell me what that sounds like. And Sean goes, oh, fuck you, little goblins, or whatever, because he's a great role player. And then you say, all right, you shout that, and I want you to roll intimidation charisma, right? And he rolls, and it's either a pass or a fail, and then you continue, and you say, oh, you shout, fuck you, little goblins, and they go, oh my God, we're small and weak, we forgot, and they put away their, or however it goes. It's a narrative to flow to narrative flow to narrative flow that's only brings up dice rolls occasionally, right? Like that's the way the gameplay is described in the books.
So all of that was really great storytelling. It did not sound like, it was not Dungeons and Dragons. Like maybe the very end you rolled an intimidation check.
I would say that is absolutely Dungeons and Dragons outside of combat.
Yeah, but it's not, none of that's really laid out in the book. The book doesn't explain how you're supposed to do that. Like that's not on the rules. And then even when it comes to rolling the intimidation check,
how it describes play. That's how the books describe play.
Poorly.
That's how it describes play. I think you just forgot because they buried it in 5 pages of content.
I think you should write an explanation of how to play Dungeons and Dragons, but this is not the impression I get from reading 5e. And then even when it comes to rolling that intimidation,
No, go for it, Ryan. Go.
I didn't hear what Sean said. I'll ask him to repeat it later. But I was even when it comes to rolling that intimidation check, there's nothing in the rules for how to handle that. Like it's totally up to the DM's discretion what to do with an intimidation check, because there's no good rule for handling what even is the DC of an intimidation check to get a goblin to surrender. There's like intimidation doesn't lay out any like none of the skills lay out what success or failure looks like, how to handle it, how to handle these DCs. In my mind, these are all, like Sean was saying, poorly, half-assed systems, except for the combat system. So none of what you described sounds to me like Dungeons & Dragons. It sounds like great role-playing, great storytelling. It's not Dungeons & Dragons until you start casting cantrips and shooting shadow blasts or whatever at
I mean, if we're going to look at it that way, are we basically just saying that D&D is essentially a combat system and everything outside of the combat is so bare bones and simple that you could layer basically any simple system over it and still call it Dungeons & Dragons?
That's kind of what Neal's done, right? If you think about it, he's taken the base.
As long as you don't completely overhaul the combat system, could you change literally everything else about the game and still call it D&D?
You could change it literally everything, including the combat system, and still call it D&D. D&D is just a catch-all for tabletop RPG these days, right?
No, it's not. Don't.
But everyone says I play D&D, and then someone will be like, "Oh, what system do you play?"
Yeah,
and they're like, "I play
hit
Pathfinder."
them with my gavel, and I bury their body in my backyard.
Well, then you can't change anything, otherwise it's not D&D anymore. D&D is not actually a thing. It's it's probably like 7 different things. It's first edition, it's second advanced, it's third, it's 3.5, it's fourth, and it's fifth, and maybe there was another. Was there a first advanced?
And then there's like the all the like, I don't know, the everything built up around it. These understandings that like a good player like Greg knows how to hack Dungeons and Dragons to make it work as this
Greg knows how to hack his DM and his fellow players.
Right.
He doesn't change the rules. He's just like, I'm gonna cast a new spell, and this is how I do it. And everyone's like, okay, sure, Greg. That's how it works now.
This goes along with it. I still remember that too, when he was doing it to like scout the tomb we were going into.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting there like, is Neal just gonna let this happen?
That was great.
If it's fun for your DM, they'll just roll with anything.
Yeah. If you can that's a really good way of putting it, Ryan. If you can make it enjoyable for your DM to do it, they'll go with whatever crazy plan you want.
Right? And I'm sure Neal was like, wait, what is this spell doing? I'd have
Keep
to find
going,
out.
Greg. I gotta
Tell
know.
me, Greg.
Well, it's almost as like he was daring Neal to, like, Greg's gonna RP about how he casts a spell for 15 minutes, like daring Neal to just be like, yeah, and it does nothing, so fuck you.
Yeah, you're gonna waste that 15 minutes I spent talking, Neal? Really?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think doing it in front of stream helps, because there's hundreds of witnesses that would throw a riot if like, we go through this amazing RP storytelling situation and it just gets shot down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
It did get a bit farther when we had Walking Snowman, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, Walking Snowman was great. I loved it.
What happened to that? Why did you never bring that back, Greg? Didn't Neal let you do it?
My general philosophy was that I was sacrificing one form of power for another, right? Kind of like Full Metal Alchemist or something, right? Like I had taken a magical item, and rather than using the magical item, I was creating this cool thing that I wanted to do.
Hey Nick, we got like 3 wands in our bag of holding. Any ideas here?
Not wizards.
Well, just narrate it out, yeah.
And what ended up happening was, I think Neal and I miscommunicated on what I was trying to do. And so like we had the snowman for a while and it was a lot of fun, but it wasn't really the thing that I was trying to get out of it. And so when it died, rather than just like, oh, you have a spell and it'll come back, right? I wanted it to be kind of like the same idea of like spell research, right? Like it's like I've put all this work into creating the right geometry of spells that bind the like forces together, and I need like the power source of it. Like I would have created one with like another magical item. Like if we took the sword of Bellum and like broke it and used its magic to fuel something else, I might have done, right?
I think that's a good attitude to keep getting stuff out of your DM. Like you don't want to push your luck too far. Like if you're bending the rules to make your magic items or whatever do things that they weren't meant to do, don't push it, right? Like surprise your DM, get your magic snowman, but then don't suddenly assume that you can make as many magic snowmen as you want.
Right.
It did save our us though, the snowman.
It did.
At times, man, it was good shit.
I just liked when it shot
normal.
icicles out of its chest.
Yeah. And I think too, when you do things like that, when you're role playing, a negative response doesn't have to be the end of what you're doing either. It just means what you're trying didn't work, right? And I think everyone can relate to what they're trying to do not working.
Yeah,
right.
And there's something to be said for persistence. So like if Yaramir's magic ritual didn't work the first time, it's probably not in Greg's best interest to get frustrated and pissed off at Neal. Just do another ritual. Keep doing rituals. That's basically a good way to play out spell research.
And yeah, exactly.
That's
You're role
And if you've
playing
got a
out
good
spell
DM,
research.
by the end, he'll give you some consolation prize or some result of that research.
Absolutely, right? And it adds depth to your character. It shows you what they're doing in the world, right? And so maybe if it wasn't a streamed campaign, it wouldn't have been 15 minutes. It would have been 45. No. But
It's a break in between.
yeah. But like I always crave from my tables this like depth of character and what they're doing. I always ask my players when they travel, what does it look like? What are you doing? Right? Because it's really weird to just, we travel from point A to point B when like you've just spent 36 hours on the road together, like walking, hunting, scouting, talking. Like, what does it look like when your characters interact? What are you doing? What are you doing when you talk about your plans and your futures? And like those types of moments where you're like, oh, well, Grimes went out scouting. He came back with some information and we're talking about what to do. And like, I'm the creepy wizard. This is what the creepy wizard does, right? This is, and whether or not it had worked, right, it still would have added to the campaign.
Narrative.
And I was totally prepared to lie my ass off when Neal told me, no, you don't notice anything. And I could have just been like, I feel the currents. Right? Like,
So all of that is great storytelling and great RP. Like coming back to our previous disagreement, none of that to me sounds like Dungeons and Dragons. Like none of that is outlined in the rule books on how to play.
It's not in the rule book, but it is D&D. That's what it's all about.
Well,
right?
okay, so what is the significance of labeling something as not D&D? Like, do
if
we
it's
care?
in the rules or if it's not.
Yeah, but like, who gives a shit if it's in the
Fair
rules or
enough.
not?
Yeah,
I mean,
But like, so what is the point of trying to say that this isn't D&D?
I guess I'm thinking from the mindset of a newer player or someone picking up the rule book and trying to figure out how to play Dungeons and Dragons. And like the rules do not really give you a good framework for figuring out how to do this stuff on your own.
one of the things.
Oh, yeah, totally.
No, I agree with that.
I agree with that. Yeah.
One of the things that rule books have been missing since the beginning of time is a how-to section.
they used to have those. That
like-
was a thing.
Like AD&D 2E has a lot of examples. I don't know how helpful they are, but they've got like
The
these little like
examples
aside like italics text of like Wrath
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
Dwarf.
Those are
The
my
issue
favorite
I have
parts.
with the AD&D examples is they're sporadic and littered throughout the text of the book, and you have to
describes the
be
whole system.
searching for them.
It almost
And-
seems like it should have been two separate books, or like a condensed 100 pages of rules and then like a 20-page story, just in order describing.
Here's how an encounter gets played out, and then you play out the whole
There
encounter.
are a few pages with that, but it's like smack dab in the middle of. tiny
Yeah, and it's
movements
just
or
like a
something
boring bit of somebody's like fan fiction that they slapped into the book.
Yeah.
I love their fan
One of
fiction.
the original D&D edition. I don't remember which one it was. I think it might have been the one Frank Menser wrote, but it had a booklet in it that was just like a choose your own adventure to make your character. And then it had like a little sample dungeon in it. And then it taught you like, once you finish that, it was like, all right, now here's a dungeon, go get some friends together and like run this dungeon for them. And then you get to the next one, it's like, oh, but we forgot to put the monsters in this dungeon, so you're gonna have to do that yourself. And then it would like give you a blank map that you could populate with like items and monsters. And then once you got through that, it was like, oh, we forgot to map this next floor of the dungeon. You're gonna have to do all of that yourself. And it was like a booklet that taught you GMing by putting you through like a whole introductory adventure that gradually gave you more tools to like build the adventure with as you went session to session. So they used to have those. They used to have like an introductory how to D&D way back in the day, and it's just like with I guess everybody's brains turned off once they got to the advanced D&D era. They were like, everybody knows what's going on, right? And then they never went back.
And I feel like Wizards did not anticipate the popularity of 5e, and it was kind of written with the assumption that everyone who's into this hobby knows what's going on.
Yeah. I don't agree. I think 5e was specifically written for newer players.
Yeah. Well, I think 4e did a better job of being written for newer players, to be honest.
I think we could quibble about the formatting of the book and the formatting of the text and how it is not formatted in a way that is helpful for players, but the systems are created from newer players.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the big issue
100%.
is that if you were to fix the bad technical writing that went into making 5e, you would have a bundle of tools that would actually be pretty solid for running a lot of games.
I think that's the separation that needs to happen in people's minds, though, is that the poor publishing practice that plagues 5e and just turned into Professor P there or whatever, is not 5e itself, right? Like, just because the books are poorly laid out doesn't mean that the systems themselves aren't for specific purpose.
I think let's get off our high horse for a second. None of us are published RPG authors in this. It's challenging to put together something.
Oh yeah.
And you can say that a huge organization with a budget like Wizards should be able to put together a better edited book. But I mean,
and on tough.
We haven't produced anything better.
Yeah, I judge that off of
Neal and I put together and post online are like even worse than Wizards in terms of the comprehension of our technical writing.
But like, I'm not comparing 5e to like community published work. I'm comparing to other game books that I've read and played, and like how much better at introducing games and mechanics some other systems that I've read are.
Yeah, I think the challenge here is there's so much history and momentum behind Dungeons and Dragons that it's hard to introduce it. Whereas if you've got a new system that you came up with from scratch, you've got this blank slate to start from, and it puts you in the mindset to introduce, okay, here's this game, here's what it's about. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons, there's a lot of cultural baggage to unpack. And so it is challenging to lay that out.
To unpack that baggage though? Like, won't the cultural baggage will come naturally, right? They just have to teach you how to play the game. Because like the only thing you actually need the system for is the rules, right? The rules are what you resolve when any other method of adjudication has failed, right? They're the rules are essentially your backup plan. So they have to teach you, this is what you do in this situation where you think you need to make a die roll. And that's all they really have to do in the book. And then they can let all the cultural baggage just come from the fact that D&D has like...
I don't really agree with that. I think that game systems are more than just a dice roll. Dice rolls are a way to resolve
they're
things, but I think the game systems themselves inform a style of both problem solving and like introduction of
you drive methods of interaction with the rules that you make.
And not even just the roles, right? Like just what is available on your character sheet and what is available in the systems themselves will drive how you interact with games, right? I think that you need more than just this is how you resolve dice rolls. This is how like I think just a paragraph or a chapter on like this is kind of how we expect when you play a game of Dungeons and Dragons, it will look like, it will go, right? Because those types of discussions are often held by people who've played the game like us or other people online in forums or at your house table, but they're not held by the books themselves, even though the systems drive that as much as anything else. A game played with 5e is going to look and feel differently than a game played in 4e and played in 2. Neal, played in Dungeon World, played in Stars Without Number. And even if the dice rolls were resolved not at all during the session, the game will still inform it that way. We've played whole sessions of 2 Neal without a single dice roll, and I know you played full sessions of Seekers of Sarmanath without a single dice roll, but they still felt distinctly different because the way you came to those resolutions of conflict or even the potential conflicts themselves were just set up differently.
I think that's not even a case of 5e versus 2e though, so much as it was I think those are game systems, right? They're like the engine the game runs on, and then Seekers of Sarmanath and Frozen Frontier, those were the actual games that were built using those engines. So they could do different things and they incentivize different things. But ultimately the difference in feel and tone came from like establishing tone and expectations in the game itself between the GM and the players.
I like that mindset, that concept of looking at a campaign as a game built with a particular engine. So like I'm not even sure if I would agree that what you said a few sentences ago, that you had an entire session without a dice roll. I don't know. I'm not sure if I would be comfortable saying that's a session of Dungeons and Dragons, but it is a session of Frozen Frontier, or it's a session of Misclick's Devotion or whatever. And so that's the particular game built using the Dungeons and Dragons engine. Yeah, I guess.
Do you ever actually play Dungeons and Dragons, or is it just the engine that runs the things that you
I've
play?
never had. I mean, this is a new thought, and that's why I was.
I think that's fair, though, right?
I think that's a good way to think of it. Is you're not
choosing what engine you use to build your campaign. Like maybe you're right. Maybe we don't play Dungeons and Dragons. We play the campaign that Tom made in his basement. And Tom's campaign runs one way, and like Jeff's campaign runs another way.
And it's not even Tom, and it's like this specific campaign of Tom's runs this way.
Yeah,
and maybe the next time he does it, he'll have different house rules.
Yeah, and Tom's campaign B will be different. But the engine that you choose to power it will inform to some extent how it looks. And Tom's campaigns A, B, and C are going to be different and are going to play differently, but they're going to be informed from the same place. But Tom's campaign D, that he chose to play Shadowrun because his girlfriend was really into it, is going to look a lot different, right? Because it's informed from a different starting.
So I'd like to say the game system is your motherboard, and all the little house rules that you plug into it will be your various peripherals and add-ons, and then the game that you play is actually what you run on this system.
Yeah, like you can adapt a game engine to do a lot of things that it wasn't necessarily meant to do, like Dragon Age Inquisition, which ran on that one engine that I forgot the name of that they used to make the Battlefield games, and as a result, everybody's hair looks like it's a plastic clip-on. Like that's just the nature of game engines. You can adapt them in a lot of ways, but they might look a little bit ugly when you use them for things they weren't meant to do.
Yeah, I think we chased Nick off. I feel
we bored him with our. We drove him to smoking out the window.
It seems like a lot of semantics, like what you guys are talking about here.
Oh yeah, we're terrible people.
So
it is D&D. Like even if you're not making a dice roll, I still think it's D&D because the way the actions the players are taking are informed by the rule set.
Yeah, I guess you've always got your character sheet in the background, and your threats are informed by what's in your character sheet.
Yeah, so, and the way that you engage with the situation is knowing what things will be resolved mechanically if it comes to die rolls.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so if you're role playing if you're playing a 10th level fighter with 50 HP. Your role play will be informed by that. So when you're intimidated, when you're telling the town guard to go fuck himself, you do that with a different attitude because you can back it up. You know that if it comes to a sword fight, you can take the whole town.
You could slaughter everybody.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it.
Bit of a tangent, but what I think was a really good document was the D&D 5e basic rule set. Just like that 100-page PDF with just like the stripped down version of the rules. Like that to me was the core of D&D. And I got really excited seeing that. It looked like a super simplified D20 system that could accommodate every previous edition of D&D. And it seemed to me like that was the vision for it. And then I've kind of forgotten that. Like since all the books have come out, they've kind of clogged it down with a bunch of other stuff. And a lot of that seems intimately intertwined with the rules now. So a lot of the campaign setting, race, class stuff is now pretty stuck into D&D 5e. And what I thought was the original vision to make this basic bare bones D20 system that could accommodate rules from every previous edition kind of somewhere got thrown out the window.
Yeah, I remember them talking a lot about 5e was going to be the modular system. It was going to be the one where we're going to have a very basic framework and then lots of modular systems you can attach to it. And they didn't do that.
Well, at its core, I think it's still there. I think it's a really good system for that.
It's great. Like 5e is a game that you can hack very easily, but they did not make the modular system that they promised, in that they did not make the modular rules that they promised.
Yeah, but it hasn't been done. Like they haven't maybe that's coming. Maybe that's 6e is they're going to take the 5e rules and put them forward in a way that's more modular, or maybe a third party publisher is going to put it together. I think one thing they did that got in their own way is the way they've released, I don't know, what is it called? Like their creators marketplace. What is it called? Like D&D.
Yeah, they came up
Masters,
with
whatever.
They're doing the Steam Greenlight model, aren't they? Where you can I don't
and like ask for money for your creations based on, which I kind of applaud the thought behind it. And it seems like they're trying to make it like they learned from their mistakes and they're trying to make it relatively easy to hack and publish your own stuff based off of it. But I don't think it was doesn't seem like it was executed that well.
Yeah, and I think that was mostly driven by the fact that they want to take a cut of any content that somebody makes for the system, and that's.
Paizo
can't
fucked
ever
him
have
so
another
hard.
Dota. That would be the worst.
Yeah,
thing
that's
possible.
what I get. It's like Dota happened, and every other company on the planet is like, we cannot let that be us, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in now, where you get like the open gaming license is dead. Nobody does anything like what 3E does anymore unless they're a small indie publisher.
Yeah, apparently WotC got really fucked in 3.5 and 4th edition by having that. And then Paizo just made all this shit and took all the profits, and WotC got salty.
Yeah, but I mean, like, honestly, I'd call that a good thing. There you go.
I the market, and props to Paizo
I
for
think
making probably a better game.
I think they're locking it down. But I think it's like a short-sighted business decision, and the long-sighted one would have kept the open gaming license around.
Yeah, I think it's a decision made out of greed. Just like, hey, there's money that was spent in this area that could have been our money, but it's these other people's money because they came up with this other product that sort of piggybacked on ours.
Yeah,
I think it's
intellectual property will kill us all.
So I would like to. Oh, I'm sorry. Go for it, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, just capitalism, but yeah.
Damn you, capitalism. Okay, so we've got our Jim Sterlings out of us. Now, I feel like we've been going over this system thing for a really long time.
Yeah.
So I
do you
feel
want
like
to do something else?
To put a pin in it, I would like to ask you, what is your favorite part about the systems, right? Like, what is it that makes you enjoy the Dungeons and Dragons? Or like, what is your favorite system that you played in? Like, let's end it on a little bit of like, let's highlight the things that we really enjoy and like can look forward to in these discussions that we've had.
I feel like rule systems create a sense of character about the sort of game they expect you to play. And this is one of the biggest things I struggle with about the very like lightweight systems that intend to be like, this is 20 pages in total, and then you can go and play the game. Is that like, I think about the tone or the feeling they're trying to invoke, and it's just blank. Whereas when I look at 2E, even though it's a very like wild and weird fucking system, like I imagine what they want 2E to look like, and I can like clearly imagine that, right? 2E gives like a very specific feeling in my head that I can't necessarily even like explicitly elaborate on. But like when I think, what does 2E look like? I know what 2E looks like, right? I think that's one of the big things, is that all the systems kind of develop their own sense of character. And that's an important thing for me. It's something that I still don't even really know how you make that exactly. And that really bothers me, because if I can't explain it, I might as well not know it.
To me, I like the fact that, well, it feels like 5e has been made, I think, from the point of view of the video games generation. Everything needs to be balanced. Everyone needs to be like super flashy. No, not really. And I like the fact that 2e is totally unbalanced. But I would say that I really liked, I played Neverwinter Nights a lot. The character building in 3rd edition was great. And that's something, it's like the way you could like mix the classes, and there was like so many ways to get like unique things out of characters and like, I don't know, break them in certain ways that I liked. But 2e is the best system for role-playing in my opinion.
I think that is kind of my favorite part, is that these systems are so different from each other that they support very different feelings, right? If you want this like really gaming centric granular thing, there's a system to help you for that. And if you want the like video game feel, then there's a system for that. And if you just want to chat shit for 4 hours, like there's a system for that. And I think it's really cool exploring all the like possibilities supported by them all.
For combat systems, I still feel like nothing beats a classic D20 roll to hit for like a streamlined, like blow by blow sword, swing by swing. D20 is the way to go. But I feel like that really falls short when it comes to like the RP or the soft skill, or whatever you call it, like skill based systems.
I like 2D6 systems a lot. skills.
That's kind of and D&D is my bread and butter. That's pretty much all I've played. But I think for like the skills system or for the social stuff, dice pool based systems seem to me to be much better for handling those sorts of things. So like 2d6s are good, or like a burning wheel type system or like, I guess that kind of comes from Shadowrun, right? Where you're like building up a dice pool for your skill check.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So
I don't know the exact origins of it.
Yeah, and does Stars Without Number it's a D20 system, but for the skills they've got a dice pool system or something like that. I could see something like that being a pretty interesting blend of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
At the end of the day, though, the system doesn't really matter all that much, right? And it's about the setting.
I might have agreed with you up until about half an hour ago. I think I was kind of convinced by these guys talking about like even if you don't roll the dice, having the system, having your character in the back of your head sets the tone for what's going on at the table. It's the engine that your campaign is built on. And so sure, the system doesn't matter, but the campaign matters. And the campaign was built using an engine. So even if during that session you don't roll anything, you generated your monsters using the system. Chat can't see it, but Sean's cam was just photobombed by Peanut Butthole.
No, but at the end of the day, Frozen Frontier would have been 90% the same if it was 5th rather than 2nd.
No, I don't think so. Maybe I don't know. So to me, I would never recommend repeating that in a million years. But I think part of the feel of Frofro was that we made this horrible, inconvenient, spreadsheet-heavy system for tracking our equipment and for tracking our exhaustion and our
never again.
Never again. But like
it was never relevant.
The fact that we used such a tedious system made the campaign feel like a tedious wilderness exploration campaign.
Yeah,
and if we had done 5e and just used their exhaustion system to track our warmth and encumbrance,
it would have felt fundamentally different.
It would have, it wouldn't have felt so tedious and exhausting.
But I do want to say in support of Nick is that the people you play with are very fun, and like they can bring out the best of your campaigns regardless.
Frofro wasn't supposed to be fun.
Frofro was art.
Yeah. And so I think that's probably the best summing up point possible, is that discussion right there that you two just had, is that like, yes, system matters, yes, system defines what we do, but at the end of the day, the group of 5 of us is the like thing we come back for.
And we could have done Frofro in with 5e,
and it would have been a different game, but
I think it would have been different.
Yeah,
in subtle ways that you can't necessarily.
Yeah, okay, it would have been different, but what made it
obvious?
But what made it Frozen Frontier would have been the same.
For our next campaign, why don't we just do Frofro over again in 5e and just like see how it would be?
No, Neal, I don't want to do that. Look, I had fun on that show. I don't want to go back.
Yeah, no.
NPCs, please. Talk to me in silly voices, Neal.
Hello.
Frofro inspired Hideo Kojima to make Death Stranding.
Well, Nick, you had wanted to bring up that topic of what to do next, I think.
Yes, I did. So what do we do next?
What do you suggest?
Okay. So,
Minotaur game.
What?
To me,
Minotaur game?
Minotaur campaign.
No.
Minotaur campaign.
I'm vetoing it. I don't know if I get a veto, but if I do,
Neal and I played some Minotaur campaigns in our day, and
we have.
They've ruined friendships.
Dual wielding Nodachis, mohawks. Blue mohawks covered in 007 tattoos.
It was an afro.
Look, we could streamline every combat in this Minotaur campaign to just be roll d20 to win or lose. That's fine. I just want the Minotaur I want Minotaur politics. I want like Minotaur. I want to go to Minotaur land where everybody's a Minotaur.
Minotauria?
Yeah.
No, I'm vetoing it. Do I get a veto, Neal?
We get to have a discussion.
We
don't start with vetoes. That's not a very diplomatic way to approach this. What do you have in mind, Nick?
The first question should be, do we want to play like Hardcore Heroes, which was just let's make 4 characters and put them in a world and see what happens, versus Frofro, which was like, we have this overarching, not goal, but setting and feel and certain, it's not railroading, but a direction that we're moving the campaign in. So I think that's the first question. But I had an idea which I was thinking about today, which would be quite cool. So, right, we start off working for Fortune in Count Vicious, like working for him, but eventually sort of become disillusioned and work then to overthrow him from the inside. But it might
Was
be
everybody ever illusioned with Count Vicious?
Well, I don't know, you know, the money, the power. People could be, but that might be too much railroading to say that from the start.
I feel like it's dangerous to tell your DM what he should do.
I'm less inclined to play with heavily established characters, locations, and events right away. Right, if we ran into Count Vicious and decided to do something with him, then that would be cool. But I feel very disinclined to be like, we're gonna be, you know, Count Vicious's men, or we're gonna be Eridonian soldiers, right? Like, I would prefer to be 4 characters first.
Yeah, I think that was part of the appeal of Frofro too, was that nobody really knew what was going on with that section of the world. Like, we just kind of went somewhere that was very unknown and made like a very new thing out of it.
But that's because it was an exploration campaign, like
right. But it's not even just like, oh, the land was unexplored by people. It was also narratively unexplored in the worlds and games that had been played, right? So like, you run a game in Sylvis, and that's like a thing that exists, but nobody really knows what's going on in Sylvis, right? Because we haven't seen anything in Sylvis. And that's the difference, is like audience knowledge versus like established position in the universe.
Yeah. So I mean, where haven't we? Do
you guys want to play mice that live in the bar of Shenanigans?
Mouse guard.
You could have mouse wizards and warriors and stuff. Hopefully you won't go and try and just like steal everything out of the treasury and lie your way through it, because it'll just get you all killed right away.
No, let's not play mice. Okay. Can we not
No
play?
mice.
Can we not just play, you know, minotaurs,
no sorcerer mice?
Gnomes.
I was into the mice playing. Dan,
I just want to talk to the NPCs.
And then there was shitting happening, and then there was like opium, and it was bad.
That was.
Was this yesterday's Shenanigans?
Yeah.
Yeah. It started sort of interesting and then went like crazy off the rails. We have some new players.
Shenanigans, and I feel like it's just one of those weird experiences that someday I'm gonna stumble into.
Have you played on Shenanigans?
No.
Oh.
Nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could watch it. No offense.
None taken. I can't watch any of our games.
I haven't played in a while, but it was even frustrating to play. It's just such like you show up with a character and an idea, and you probably aren't going to get to do it. You're just going to spend the whole 2 hours bickering and making stupid jokes.
This was my
pulling a million directions at once and not being able to get anything done. Or getting a million things done, and
it's definitely, there's no serious tone to it. There's no like, I'm going to have a story arc. It's more of like, I'm going to fall into whatever trope Rob is doing this week and build my play around that.
Yeah. And like coming from single player, like Dicing with Death, where you get so much done. It was really frustrating to show up to Shenanigans and to just have nothing happen over the course of a session.
It's a very, very, very different game. It's not even Dungeons and Dragons anymore, you know.
I like the seriousness.
Please don't put us back in this discussion.
No, just joking. Yeah,
I like the seriousness of the games we play, like with the serious RP and the I don't know, the realistic feel of the world and what we're doing.
Well, what else do you guys want to do then? Greg, do you have any ideas on what you want?
Greg must have an idea.
I've been so deep in trying to make my sandbox for the Les Marches campaign that I don't really have a lot of campaign ideas.
Is it a 5e sandbox or?
Well, the thing about
Burning Wheel.
Let's not talk.
So I will be playing in 5e because it is the most easily accessible for chat and other players, and I'm hoping to have a lot of people play with me, right? That's the best way to the most common, most widely spread, most understood system. But the thing about sandboxes is they're kind of we just had this huge talk about how systems matter, but they can be somewhat asystematic, because what you're really rolling for are like events and items and locations, and then you can use a system to play them any way you wish.
It's more world building. World building
Right.
matters more than the system, but you need to choose a system that's compatible with it. So like,
Correct.
Yeah.
slapping on 5e, you got to be ready for some tieflings to show up and totally break your immersion, or like everybody's a dragonborn, and all of a sudden,
okay, hold on. You can cut out races from D&D 5e. That's fine.
Yeah.
We're slipping back here.
Yeah, we've already talked systems.
Yeah. Please get out.
Get out.
But in terms of Cam.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go
Go
ahead.
for it.
I was just gonna say, I think in terms of a new campaign, for the benefit of the community, right? I think it doesn't have to be Count Vicious or whatever, but it should be grounded in something.
Forget the community. We don't play campaigns for the community. They can follow along with our adventures, but we do not kowtow to them, and we do not make content to please them.
What if we make
they can all burn in hell?
Okay, so there's the option of just like making a new landmass that we can then
weren't you gonna like start a new one anyways, Neal? Like you were gonna move away from Arcadia?
Yeah. Well, probably won't. Whatever it'll be, probably won't take place in
Give
Arcadia.
me a new sandbox to piss in.
Oh,
yeah, let's make a new sandbox.
Okay, so
I'm not so interested in exploring the like unexplored anything again, right?
Yeah, no.
Exploring new locations is part of D&D, right? I will happily support the exploration pillar of play, but I'm not so interested in playing an exploration campaign, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't want to go to Caledonia 2.0 wherever it is.
I agree. It doesn't matter whether it's Caledonia or not. The idea that it was this unexplored place that we were like scouting out, that's been done.
Yeah, we're not talking like uninhabited continent, right? We're just talking a continent that hasn't been developed yet.
Yeah.
Like a place that theoretically has people living in it.
I think the best campaigns are often like, here's a world and it has these things going on in it, and you players are the characters, and we like be 4 or 5 or 6 or however many there are characters first, and then like you'll encounter the things in the world that are happening, and like that will drive the plot of the game, right? I don't really think that I'm super excited about being like 4 militant soldiers for Count Vicious, right? Like that's like a one shot to me, or like a 4-week campaign or something, right? Like an adventure rather than a campaign.
Which if Neal has ideas there, that could be a fun route to go.
It could be a fun adventure, I guess. But it's up to Neal, right? If that's what he wants.
I mean, I think I agree with Gregor. If it's going to be a new land area, then it should just be hardcore.
Yeah, you guys are 4 people.
Yeah.
Like you can have a broad direction to go in, right? Like you could say this is going to be a campaign about fortifying your kingdom against some impending external threat. But then like that's very broad, right? There's a lot of things you can do in that space.
Well, aside from story aspects, what like more perhaps granular things might you want? Like, do you want to be peasants? Like dirty peasants? Do you want to be good people? Do you want to be nobles?
I'd actually really like to be like a noble game, because I don't think we haven't done that, have we?
Yeah.
No.
I kind of like to play something that has a little bit more clout in the world, and like maybe tries to
the good nobles defending the people from the Sea of Darkness.
Potentially.
What's the Sea of Darkness?
I don't fucking know yet.
Monsters, Malachi. I don't know.
Other D&D players.
I have to say, I like seeing the consequences of my actions.
I do as well.
Right, like seeing my character have impact. And if it's just an isolated campaign, you don't get that. Whereas I've had a lot of fun. I mean, we may be reaching, like, we may have climaxed with Arcadia, but over the past couple of years, it's been really cool seeing these choices and consequences ripple out across the stream and across the different campaigns.
I think there's only one more campaign to set in Arcadia to finish off the Arcadian storyline, and then we'll probably have to start a new area and like lay the groundwork for a new area, and then build on it again.
I think the fun thing will be to lay the groundwork for that new area to set up campaigns that will intertwine in new and interesting ways. And anyways,
if you are going to start a new area, what better way to explore it than with us, right?
So,
have you learned any lessons from us, Neal? Are you ever going to let me break in your sandbox again, or do you regret?
What do you mean?
Played it?
What played out? Hardcore Heroes and Georg and all that stuff?
Yeah,
I regret nothing. It was perfect. Yeah,
it was perfect. But would you do it the same way again?
Yeah, totally.
Do you feel like you need? Yeah.
I mean, I might try something new just for the freshness of new things, but I'm very happy with how it all played out, and I would totally re-walk that same path again. But I hear that Greg wants to be a good person and not an evil person.
Sean
playing good characters,
so
I'm down.
Every single campaign.
Sean wants to play
as
nobles.
resident good guy character. I am on board with Greg for this.
Okay. Ryan wants to feel the impact of his character and his decisions.
Power.
And Nick, what do you want? On a more like not story level, but like on a character level or something.
Nick just wants to be famous.
Yeah. No, I don't. I just want to talk. I want to talk to the NPCs. I'm not sure, Neal. I'm just kind of happy to do it.
I want to talk to the NPCs.
Okay.
I don't know. I liked the role I had in Fro, even though it was stressful at times. I enjoyed doing that.
I apologize.
I think I want to not.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
William was good. I
liked Fro, but I would not want to be the that role again.
I liked Fro. I will never go back.
I would just I don't want to be the convict taking orders.
No.
That's done.
Yeah. I think I'm done being the edgy loner, racist half elf.
Yeah. I don't know that Nick gets to be the captain this time around.
No, not again. I did enjoy it.
Yeah. Totally.
I think it's a nice dynamic having a captain though, right? Or having someone who's in charge, because usually when you play D&D, it's not like that, right? It's more of a
back in the olden days, you always had a party leader, and this person was sort of like in charge.
I think
and
that's
we
just how
fell away
that's
from
kind
that.
of human psychology. It kind of tends towards that. Usually, there's a handsome fighter.
But it's nice having that be more overt rather than just kind of like there is a leader, but we don't really. It's nice having someone be on top structurally instead of just socially.
The leader back then was less like I'm literally in charge of the party and more I'm the person who puts a voice to what the party is going to do.
Yeah.
So they're the one responsible for like getting everybody's actions together and organizing a plan for the party. Which is, I guess, a leader technically. Sure, fuck it. There was a leader.
It was kind of convenient in Fro to have a captain.
Yeah.
And have the hierarchy laid out that way.
It's
versus in typical D&D campaigns, just like de facto, you've got a paladin or bard that's calling the shots.
Mm-hmm.
This is a unrelated campaign idea, but in quarantine, I've watched Better Call Saul, and right now we're watching Ozark. I think a crime syndicate campaign could be an interesting.
I was so close to making that happen in Hardcore Heroes.
You were like 1 or 2 steps away, actually.
I was like one die roll on a sleep spell, or like not being an idiot.
Yeah.
The funniest thing to me is that I will still hear to this day that it's like, Krob got killed by his love of the dwarf. Krob didn't give a fuck about that dwarf. He wanted to use her. He just had the deficiency of Greg having less int than the character.
You mean because you thought you could bring her on side?
The
thing is, you could have found another muscle to run the shop.
Yeah. I had thought out like scenario of scenario over if Zinli said yes, if Zinli said no, if Zinli was posing a problem, how I was going to like separate her from her weapons, and like how I was going to make sure that like I had the upper hand. And then when I walked into the room, I went, "Hi, can we sit on the bed?" And then she like got her weapon, and I was like, "This is fine. This is fine."
Disarmed by those dwarven good looks.
I guess. I don't know. Greg just had a bad day. Greg was too high on like his plan actually working. He was like, I'm gonna chop a body up. Chat's gonna be excited. I got these magic items.
It's probably good that you died there though, because otherwise it would have been I feel like Van or Croak would have wound up killing each other. Probably Croak killing Van, because I think he would have done it discreetly, whereas Van would have probably been like, I challenge you to a duel.
I think we would have been okay, because I don't think you would have noticed.
Well, not from that. I think in the long term it would have turned into that.
Maybe.
Would have been cooler.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, no. So we have good guy. What did Ryan say? I know Nick was cool with whatever.
Ryan said crime syndicate, which might not work with good guy nobles. Unless Ryan's like the butler that hangs around. Ryan could be Jeeves and just work for you guys. And...
Well, I mean, somebody put it in chat, but it would be funny if all three of us were nobles and one was just like a stable boy.
Like, I don't think I would play a noble. If we were doing a noble campaign, I would want to be like
a stable boy,
knight or something.
Okay.
But I mean, I could still find a character that could play in a noble campaign, right?
Yeah, something that like belongs with the nobility, but isn't necessarily nobility.
Yeah.
Any
I feel like once you've obtained nobility, there's nowhere forward for you to go socially. So you either have to go somewhere where your nobility doesn't matter, right? You have to play. If you're already a noble, in order to have forward progress as a character, you either have to go somewhere or adventure in some way that means that you're no longer a noble, or your nobility doesn't matter where you are, or like you just have to sit in a courtroom and have a social campaigin. And like I could have a social campaign, but I don't think that's what we're looking for.
I worry that Dungeons and Dragons isn't the system to do that social campaign. Like, what are we just gonna roll? Are we just gonna roll charisma checks nonstop all day?
Please stop.
We're actually gonna make Neal play Made RPG, and we'll just have.
Okay, I've played Made RPG. That would not be a bad time. That'd be fun.
I know. I've been trying to get you guys to play with me. It's good stuff.
That'd be a no from me.
I enjoy.
I know. Okay, so I've tried.
So what I'm hearing is Sean is our noble, and you guys are his bitches. Like his knights and servants and stuff.
Could work, yeah.
Why am I the noble? All right.
You're the one who wants to be a noble. I'd like to play a cleric, I think.
Oh, cleric.
I really like Neal's reworked cleric stuff that never got fully fleshed out.
Yeah, if it was fleshed out more, I'd be up for that. But it seems a little bit underpowered right now.
I like clerics. I like the by the book clerics. I'm a big fan of how clerics work in stock D&D.
I'm not as big a fan.
I think it leaves too much to the DM, to the campaign setting, right? Like if you just read by the God, we keep coming back to the same damn conversation.
Hold on, no, I'm not talking about like every single like weird specific extraneous rule that's in like the 5 paragraphs of cleric description. I'm talking like the default spells and like the spheres of power. I like how clerics work, generally speaking.
Yeah, but you need the campaign setting to support that.
You need gods that give powers to
exactly.
But we live in that campaign setting.
Yeah. So Neal's great, but like I was disagreeing with I don't like the way clerics are laid out in the book.
Oh yeah, no.
You need a supportive DM to make.
Yeah, no. I like when I can break the whole like weird polytheistic evil gods that everybody's okay with approach of D&D. I like breaking that mold a little bit, but I like the basic concept of clerics as they mechanically work.
Neal, do you have any insight into why Faye is?
I think she was
by my comments on the cleric. Does she not have fun playing that cleric?
I think that the cleric system was not well built, and it's bringing back bad memories and nightmares of trying to work with this custom system, and it just really.
Okay. Well, it was really fun for me to watch. I'm sorry. Sorry, it wasn't fun for you to play.
I mean, I'm just guessing at that, but I think that's the deal.
Yeah, that's that's the deal.
Another campaign that I could be interested in would be like a military conquest, like war gamey style campaign, as like I don't know, like a military, like I don't know, officers in an army planning out. I don't know.
I'm worried that would be
stuff.
Like
it'd have to be laid out in a way that D&D supported.
Yeah, I like how D&D lets you kind of just like piss around and go wherever and do whatever, and there isn't much of a time constraint. I don't know if you get that in a war game.
No. And like when we did the Necromancer campaign, it got pretty, like by the end we were pretty over it.
Yeah, I think
it was a good enough system, but
being.
like it wasn't fun by the end for us to be like doing these like massive wargamey battles with the system that we had.
So 2 of you have mentioned interest in playing a cleric. What are the other 2 of you interested in possibly playing for character classes?
I've played a magic user and a thief. I think I would like to play a fighter.
Ooh,
yeah,
I love it.
I always enjoy playing fighters, so I might go with that. If
I needed to,
I could also go for a wizard. That's also a possibility.
What if you each play one head of a 2-headed troll, and each of the trolls or ogres or whatever they are is a fighter cleric, and so one of you gets to be the fighter head, the other gets to be the cleric head?
That would actually be pretty fun, I think. I think it'd be really fun when like so like imagine Greg and I are like a two-headed ogre.
Fighter, one's a cleric.
Neal, I'm into this. Okay, so like Greg and I are a 2-headed ogre, right? And then like we both, our turn comes up and we disagree as to where to go. So our heads are arguing in character and wasting time about which direction they want to move on this turn.
Oh my God. I love it.
We could mechanize, like you would each have your own stats and you could be like rolling opposed.
We are Cho'Gall.
Opposed willpower checks. Yeah, exactly.
It's a gimmick. It'd get boring after 5.
Oh yeah, no. This is like a 2-month campaign or something.
Maybe, or I mean, you'd have to have really good synergy between the players that are stuck inside the body.
But who's gonna hang out with them? Like who
you
are the 2 idiots that are hanging out with the fucking
two-headed ogre? It's two-headed ogres.
No, we can't have two-headed ogres in the party.
All right, you're one 4-headed ogre, okay? You only have 2 arms though, so 2 of you have to be spellcasters.
Oh my God.
All right,
and we're a noble, and we're a good guy, and a maid, and we're wrapped up in a crime syndicate.
The noble maid who is stealing from her betters as a 4-headed ogre?
I like the 2-headed ogre idea. You need like 4 arms though, right? Because you'd have to have like.
No, you only got 2, so you have to be like 2 fighters and then 2 spellcasters who don't have access to arms.
Oh, okay, so you're like dual wielding with one, and then you got spellcasters. Okay, that makes more sense. I was thinking you'd have like a fighter mage, a fighter cleric, for each ogre.
Okay, yeah. Well, we probably won't go down that route. Unfortunately.
Good to hear it.
I put it away for later. I think it's a viable gimmick character.
Yeah, we'll play that when
we'll do this.
Appropriate character.
When Nick has outgrown us with his fame.
You should do that just on Shenanigans. Right.
It's too good for Shenanigans. Shenanigans doesn't deserve this idea.
It doesn't deserve this idea.
The thing with Shenanigans is it can be hard to properly spotlight, because the premise of Shenanigans is that
you've got 5 other players yelling over you.
The premise of Shenanigans is every single player is weird and quirky and needs to spotlight. And so unless you have really good chemistry in the group, or you're an asshole like Greg who brings a character that shouts positive things at every single second, you can't grab the spotlight. And
I think that's kind of the point. It's like everyone is playing a 2-headed ogre, so it's no longer weird to be a 2-headed ogre.
Yeah, that too, right? Yeah,
but what if it's a world of 2-headed
really
ogres?
Do much.
What if everyone is a 2-headed ogre apart from us on the whole continent? We're the only humans. No. Okay.
All right. Well, I've got some ideas that I can start to work with here. I'd like to do something maybe in like the last age, before the storms came and the mountains rose, on the island of Bravo.
Is that
the
is the last age before the breaking?
Yeah, before the breaking.
Okay.
On the island where Yaka is, where you guys all did that the Legend of Yaka together, but like before all the shit went to hell.
Wait, was I in that? Was I in the Legend of Yaka?
It was like a 24-hour game last August.
I don't think you were.
I wasn't there. I wasn't there for that. I remember you invited me, and then I couldn't do it for some reason.
Right.
3 of us were.
And then I treated it like Shenanigans and created a stupid character.
Tay-Tay is amazing. Don't even.
Thank you.
Wahanian in chat says prequels are inherently pointless. Fuck you, Wahanian. Go to hell. You're wrong. Done.
Okay, what's he even mean by that?
I don't know, but he's wrong.
Like, if you already know what happens after, it's harder to have.
So what about? I mean, quite a cool idea
yeah.
for the nostalgia factor would be setting Caledonia pre-breaking, so amidst the war between the humans and the Scrags.
Mm-hmm.
Quite cool because we could visit all the places that we went to in Frofro, and it'd still be a totally different thing. But then you run into the problem of like, we already know how it ends.
It kind of limits the scope of where.
Well, here's the thing: just don't make the campaign about preventing the breaking. Just let the campaign be separate. From
something else and all that's going on in the background.
Prequel stories can be self-contained about something else. Like it doesn't even have to get close to the breaking.
It doesn't, and it wouldn't. These people are saying, "Oh, it happened before, therefore it's a prequel, and therefore it's bad," which is nonsense. This is just we're playing in a different time period, and it's further back in time.
It's
not related to anything.
Pre-breaking than it is about going into the breaking on a low level.
Or if it's too hard for you to wrap your heads around, just think it's about it like being in the future after the world got rebroken again into a flatter place.
Oh God, are we talking about the burning wheel again?
No.
When I did my audition, do you remember what I named my character?
Nope.
Shit. I was thinking I could do Taylor Swift Claw, but I think I might have already used that one.
I don't think it was Taylor Swift Claw.
You haven't used that one yet.
Okay.
He's still in it for the puns though.
Another campaign idea that I thought I would get to do in Zweihardt as we were redoing the armor system is Dwarven battle mechs. Where we
Dwarven battle mechs?
Yeah,
I've been wanting to do a campaign where the dwarves are building a battle mech and gnomes are building the battle mech, and the players have to like pick a side and gather resources for them, but then like maybe switch sides at some point or act as spies.
Like mine metals and make like components for your battle mech, and
then have the mechs fight at the very last session. Yeah, sounds fucking awesome. But then I have to live in a world where there are dwarven battle mechs, and I don't know if I want that. Like, this would be
my thought is that it would be like the armor system would be built around it, where you're like, okay, you spend these sessions gathering the resources to build a breastplate, and you enchant it, and it's like this magic thing that soaks damage, and then you've also got these other different pieces, and they're all enchanted with various things, and they're soaking up damage for you, and
okay.
Battle mechs broke the world. The gods couldn't live in a world where the gnomes and the dwarves have battle mechs, so they blew everything to pieces.
It just went on to Sean's audition on the Hardcore Heroes playlist, right, to try and see what this character's name was. And there's just a comment from some guy, Sanguine Valentin, who's put, "This guy has an annoying looking face and most of all hair."
I saw that. That's my favorite comment I've ever gotten for Hardcore Heroes.
What's annoying about it, though? That's what I want to know. He doesn't say it looks bad. It's just annoying.
Yeah,
that resting bitch
he read
face?
my personality with one look at me.
Yeah.
I like to think that it's annoying because he can't have those.
Yeah, he's just jealous.
Those looks of that hair. He's just annoyed. He's like, why can't I be like that?
I think that's definitely.
Somebody in chat is saying it was Taylor Swift Claw. Maybe.
Really?
It's a good name though. We might have to have the second Taylor Swift Claw appear on screen.
That means this landmass would be filled with multiple Taylor Swift impersonators.
Well, maybe that would explain why there was a second one, right? The legendary. Like loads of people are called Taylor Swift just because after this first hero.
Right. Okay. All right. I think I can work with this. We'll sort something out.
Oh yeah, that's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
Is the top comment on Nick's video still "this guy is a bit too competent"?
I do remember trying to be competent.
All right.
I had fun in my audition. I remember it now. I had to negotiate with some orcs, I think, because they took. They took somebody's laundry, but it was really expensive laundry. So I talked to the half orc in town, and he helped me negotiate with the orcs who had taken their laundry.
That's pretty nice.
Are you laughing because you remember this, Neal, or because it sounds like something you might do?
No, it just sounds so dumb. Why would I use that as let's test this person's capability for D&D?
With the Lord or something, and it was embroidered with his name on it.
I remember that. Yeah. There was a mystery about I think it was supposed to be to solve like an infidelity issue.
I think I took some of her clothes so I could sell them because they were so expensive.
Discarded Shenanigans plot lines.
Man.
Good times.
Okay. Well, why don't we bring this whole thing in for a landing? It's been a couple of hours here. Unless there's any last topics that anyone wants to hit up.
We didn't get to any of Greg's topics.
The funny
Greg,
thing to me is
we
that
brought-
I prepped topics like 2 months ago or no, not that. 2 weeks ago. I don't know, a month ago, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime between 2 months and 2 weeks ago, because the quarantine was like looming. And I was like, we should talk about like online gaming and VTTs and like all this stuff. It'll be topical and like maybe helpful for people. And here we are. It's like it's gonna end soon. Like they're gonna open up work and everything. It's just not gonna happen. Yeah. I think I'm just gonna trash them.
The thing is, last time we did chit chat, you weren't here, and we had nothing to talk about. We just sat here with.
It was bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the worst chit chat. It was the worst timeline.
Oh man,
I'm sorry.
That was a dark episode.
We don't know what to do without you, Greg. We're lost.
I believe in you. I think you could have gotten there.
We didn't go on to your topics, but the simple fact that you were here kept us on
That's
track.
Yeah, it's a joke, but it's true.
It's your presence, you know? It's not the things you say. It's just you being nearby.
Yeah, we know that you're here to bail us out if we go off track.
I'm like the system. I'm the engine on which chat is built, and I inform the way the show goes.
Love it. All right. That is going to wrap us up for Chit Chat today.
Good shit. Nice speaking to you all.
Absolutely. It's always good to see you.
Yeah. I will start throwing shit together, and sometime in probably a few months, we'll talk scheduling and shits.
Nice.
Also, everyone remember Mother's Day is next Sunday. Call your moms, visit your moms,
Not
send
in
them
the UK,
stuff.
so don't worry.
You don't have to care about English mothers. They don't matter next weekend.
Different day. And we're doing Hobo next weekend, right, Ryan? Neal?
Are we?
Yes.
Is that on the calendar? Okay.
It's on the calendar.
All right. So then we'll remind you to call your mother then. What? Do we need to cancel?
No, I just haven't figured it out at all, and it's so soon. It's looming in next week, and I have no idea what's going to happen.
You've got a week to figure out some elves.
Easy. He just teleports us back to Silvus and they get their 15th level cleric to cure my stone feet, reverse my magical aging. And then we just go home. That's it. It's just a wrap up, right?
No one's reversing your magical aging. It's stuck forever.
Shut up, Neal. You can't promise that.
He didn't mention the feet.
He didn't say
Pick
anything about
one
the
that
selfie.
you can fix.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. And we're clear. No, shit, I'm still talking. God damn it.